House resumes and the process continues. The process continues. I would like two people to take the floor for now. AG, you want to say something first? Okay. Yeah.
Just very briefly, just on the point
Yeah.
which was made by the honourable senator in relation to Standing Order 87. I think it's important to bear in mind. He made the point that we have no rules specifically dealing with the election of the president.
Yeah.
Which is correct. But I think it's important to note the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words of Standing Order 87.
Yes.
Which is with the practice of this House.
Yes.
So that is to say, I don't want any listener to believe that somehow the process and procedure here today is inconsistent with what is lawful. In other words, the practice of this House.
Yes, that's correct. We have had a practice since our independence. So we follow the practice, and the practice becomes law in the absence of a specific procedure. Before we proceed, I would like, yes.
Mr. Speaker, yes. I said in my comments that Mrs. Burton resigned. She actually retired from the public service.
Okay,
okay, that's on the record.
Okay, great. I would like two people, before we proceed, to take the floor. One, Senator Douglas, to respond, if you wish to. And I think it is courtesy and respect for the opposition leader to respond to the question. I think this question is even better placed at the opposition leader. But as the Honorable Prime Minister has already asked Senator Douglas, I would ask him to respond, but I would like a formal response from the opposition leader before I proceed on this matter. Please, Senator Douglas first. 30 seconds.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wants me to go on this fishing expedition with him, which I'm not going to do that. My central point...
No. It was trying to respond. So if you think he's going on whatever you said there, just take your seat and let's move to the opposition leader, which is substantive mover of the nominee. Okay. So, yes, please, opposition leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I do not want to make any decisions that my group and I, my team and I, did not have a deliberation on it. We came here this morning and we decided that we'd follow through according to the House, the Parliament. And for that reason, I won't say anything without my group and I decide on anything. So in that regard, we will proceed to any matter the House.
So opposition leader, so you are requesting that we proceed on the matter?
Proceed, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. I'm guided by the Honorable Leader of Opposition that we proceed on the matter dealing with the President. As a matter of fact, yes.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, that's on the point of clarification from the member of the opposition leader. So the issue of qualification is only relevant for that side of the House. So if you're pushing forward a nominee from your side, and the qualification requirement as stipulated in the parent law of the land, the Constitution, is not being observed. It's not relevant for that side, but it's relevant for our side. That's what we're saying to the public. So Harley But from Mao has a song, don't do it, let them do it. I don't understand it. So I'm not saying, so that's what we're bringing to the Honorable House. One standard for the issue of transparency and ethical conduct is only relevant to the Prime Minister on that side. It's to Dominica. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe that we are actually failing the people of Dominica. We are throwing the Constitution that we say that we're protecting in the garbage bin. That is what they're doing. And my last point with your permission, Mr. Speaker, it is therefore clear that the leader of the opposition, with your permission, Mr. Speaker, right, bears the title leader of the opposition, but the function and role of that office as we speak now is shared and performed by radical activists of the United Workers' Party.
Honorable Minister, I would ask you to take your seat. Let's proceed. Yes, let's proceed. But I'm going to take, I would say, the suggestion by the opposition leader to proceed on the matter. But let me just say one thing before I proceed. And I said that this morning we were a little late because we were dealing with some matter, dealing with the same qualification issue, because I got some information that was dealing with Senator Sanford. But let me just give you my take. First, I would say the jurisdiction in regards to qualification has to be at the High Court, the Court of Appeal. That's one. So, that matter, the House is not going to deal with this issue of qualification. We're going to proceed to the voting for the president. Now, however, when the information was brought to me in regards to Senator Sanford, that she may have not been, have not resigned. Yeah, sorry, Mrs. Sanford. I went to section 21. Yes, and it says a person shall not be qualified to be elected as president. That is 21 subsection 1A. He has already held the office of president for both terms. In regards to the two candidates, they have not held office for both terms. B, he disqualified to be elected or appointed as the representative or senator by virtue of section 1A, B, C, D, E, or F of section 32 of this constitution, or by virtue of any law enacted in pursuant of subsection 2, 3, or 5 of that section, in terms of elected. So I think, for the purposes of our session here, I don't think any one of the candidates or the nominees would, yes, yeah, yes, yes, yes,
So
yes.
I would respectfully advise that the speaker proceed as he indicated.
As we indicated, okay.
Deal with the matter.
Okay.
The speaker has already said that the Court of Appeal.
Yes, we'll deal with that. Okay.
Body to determine, and I would advise that the speaker.
Okay, I accept the suggestion and let's proceed. So, as I said earlier, that the clerk will now show you that the container is empty and we'll proceed to the voting. So please circulate the ballots. And I don't have to clarify that we just put the X, the normal X. Yeah. Yes, yes. Yes. Yes, I've received the results from the clerk. Annette Sanford, Mrs. Annette Sanford, 5 votes. Mrs. Sylvanie Burton, 20 votes. So I must announce that Mrs. Sylvanie Burton has been duly elected president-elect. Yes, just one major announcement is in regards to, you'd realize that we had 5 votes and 20 votes, that's a total of 25. So I would like to announce that the following people, or members, sorry, have sought permission to be absent from this House. Honorable Darren Pinat, Minister of State in the Ministry of Labor, Public Service. Honorable Kasani Laville, Minister for Health. Honorable Roland Royer, Minister for Agriculture. Honorable Dennis Charles, Minister for Tourism, and Senator Laurie Victor. In regards to the honorable ministers, they are all out on state business, official business. And in regards to Senator Laurie Victor, she's dealing with a matter where someone is a family member is sick. So permission is granted to everyone that I've mentioned. Oh, and I forget Honorable Vince Henderson also. We received a letter from him requesting permission to be absent. So if you add the total, you'll see the votes, the total number of people who were supposed to vote. If you add it up, you'll see it's okay. So that's my announcement.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to extend congratulations to the President-elect, Mrs. Sylvanie Burton. But before I do so, I wish to place on record in the hands of the House my deep appreciation to His Excellency Charles Sovereign, our President who has served us in the office of President for 10 years and who shall demit office at midnight on October 1. There's no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that His Excellency is a tower of a person in stature, physical stature, in intellect, and in his contribution to Dominica's development spanning several decades. He is one of the great Dominicans who stayed here in Dominica and made his contribution through various fields of endeavor. And there's no doubt we can have different views and different perspectives of him. But I do not believe that anyone in Dominica can deny him of his contribution, his sterling contributions to Dominica over several decades. He was a minister of government, a member of parliament, and I had the distinct privilege as a young parliamentarian to have worked with His Excellency in the cabinet of 2000 and beyond. And he would always provide sound, reasoned, and sincere advice on matters which are before us. He will not be someone who will keep his views and not make his views known. But at the end of the day, which is a very important characteristic that one must have in public office. At the end of the day, when a decision is made, it became his. And he owned it as if he was the originator of the submission. And so while he demits office as president, I believe that we owe him a debt of gratitude, a debt of appreciation for his contribution. He worked in many spheres as a diplomat, ambassador of the OECS, not only of Dominica, but the entire OECS countries in Brussels for several years, a senator and member of parliament, minister. He served in the trade union, he served as a school teacher. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that history will record His Excellency's contribution in a very positive and constructive light. And I believe it's important for us to have had the benefit of having the President served us in some difficult times. And the office of the President ought to be a stabilizer, a place of office where you can have stability, and he was able to provide that to us over the 10 years. One of the things I think all of us will remember as well, on the softer side, is that he has the distinction of having a calypso topping the charts for so many decades. Charlie, you marry. Or marry the girl Charlie. And so this calypso always top the charts at carnival time. And I'm sure, I'm hoping that one day that the calypso will be written about some of my colleagues in the House, Mr. Speaker, not too soon from now, Mr. Speaker. But I also want to recognize his wife and to give commendation to his wife. And I think she's also an example with so many virtues for all of us, but in particular the women. Through her agricultural practices, I know of because we exchange plants and fruits and vegetables from time to time. She has been able to supply over the last 10 years the State House with its fruits and its vegetables, which is commendable. But you know, Mr. Speaker, I always wonder why is she so nice and so pleasant and so on, and then I realized that she's from Penville. You know, where the best people come from, the most sincere people come from, you know, and so she's actually from Penville. Penville, what's up? It's like Douglas from Penville too, from RBD. No, from Penville. So that's another state college issue and so on. You seem to know everything except what I ask you about. You know. So, Mr. Speaker, really, it has been a service of distinction, a service of commitment, a service of love of nation, and a service to a country so vast, so profound, so sincere. And I say a heartfelt thank you to the President, from myself personally, my family, and I have benefited from his wisdom, from his intellect, from his knowledge, and I really want to say thanks to him and his family for this. So we wish him well in his other endeavors, and we pray that the Lord will continue to bless him with good health and strength, and his entire family as well, Mr. Speaker. And I wish to suggest, Mr. Speaker, that we should send a letter of thanks and commendation to His Excellency from the entire House of Assembly. Mr. Speaker, the election of Mr. Silvani Burton to the office of President of Dominica should have really been an opportunity for us to rally around one candidate and show the world that on some things there can be unity of purpose. There should really not have been any reason for there not to have been one candidate. But be as it may, that's a democratic process, and everybody has a right to determine how they do things and when they do things. That nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, it has not robbed the country of making history. It has not robbed women of an opportunity to be grateful, and that a woman, in the first time in the history of our country, has been recognized to this and elevated to this high office. And it will not rob the Kalinago people, the first peoples of our country, of an opportunity that was lost in terms of the process, but not the outcome, of having the first Kalinago person elected to the highest office in our country. I will say that history will not record those who did not support the Kalinago people in this effort to recognize them. It will not recognize them kindly. And so we will not focus on the negative side of this, but rather focus on the positive side of this. And I think that every woman in Dominica, and indeed the world, should be celebrating today. And I see here in the chamber, in the gallery, Mr. Speaker, some young ladies from the Girl Guides, Girl Guides, who are looking on, who wanted to come here to witness this historic occasion of a woman being elected, and not a woman of any pedigree, as we would say, but someone who has come from very, very challenging and humble beginnings. I believe by this act of the Parliament, we have shattered all semblance of remnants of classism in Dominica. And for me personally, I feel a bit emotional and I feel very humbled to be the leader of the country at the time this is happening. But this is not the first occurrence of us recognizing ordinary folks and elevating them to the highest office. And so I want to say to the young people of Dominica that your future should not be determined by your circumstance, especially if you are in or you have been in a difficult circumstance. Challenges must be an opportunity for us to dig deeper into our God-given talents and purpose in life, and to say to ourselves that notwithstanding the odds that we are facing, that we can overcome. We overcame slavery, Mr. Speaker, because of the indomitable spirit and the commitment of our forefathers. The Kalinago people withstood colonialism and defended their patrimony and defended their race. And this is why today, Mr. Speaker, we have the indigenous people in the heart of our society. And I say so not for any political consideration, because that's not my motivation. I'm a student of history, Mr. Speaker, and I spend a lot of my time in my desert school and even currently studying indigenous communities. And everywhere I went in the world, even when I was a student, I visited indigenous communities to see how they live and to interact with them and to read about them. And this is why we've been investing so heavily in the Kalinago territory. Yes, we have a lot more to do, but a lot has happened. And today, it is testimony of the sincerity of which we have proposed the candidacy of Mrs. Sylvanie Burton as the president. And I know even if we have concluded the process of election, I am certain that Mrs. Burton is listening and she cannot believe it. And I know that there are many indigenous people, the majority of indigenous people, still cannot believe it. Because I do not believe that they themselves would have ever, even if they were hoping that it would happen, that there are many who felt that it will never happen in their lifetime. In their lifetime. But I want to also say, Mr. Speaker, that Mrs. Sylvania Burton was not presented simply because she was a woman and simply because she was a Kalinago person. The Constitution speaks to specific qualifications to be considered for office of the President Dominica. But there are also unspoken things and unwritten things in the Constitution which are equally, if not more important, than the specific qualifications that have been articulated in the Constitution. I will not list them. I'll leave it for the rest of us in the country to list for ourselves. And this is why when we are engaging on the selection of a president, it must be done with seriousness. It must be done with a recognition of the high office and what that high office requires of the individual who will hold that high office. We cannot appear to be treating the process of election of a president as if, you know, it is some sub we have, and then who is going to hold the hand this time around. We have to do so seriously. I think, Mr. Speaker, if I do say with the greatest sense of humility, I have said to many international and regional women's organizations and even national women's organizations that I believe I deserve an award from all of them, you know. Because women in Dominica really got the attention in terms of the respect, in terms of the elevation to offices when I became the Prime Minister of Dominica. Today, we can boast of having the most women in Parliament anywhere in the Caribbean. We can boast of having the most women in the cabinet anywhere in the Caribbean. In the public service, women take over, Mr. Speaker. And today is this singular, historical consideration of a woman of Kalinago descent being elevated to the office of President Dominica. I believe this is a moment for all of us in Dominica to celebrate. Because if we want to play partisan politics with this, the question is, what kind of lesson are we teaching our children? What kind of lesson are we teaching our own sisters? And so there are some things, Mr. Speaker, that we can play politics with, but there are some things that I don't think we should. And I think the election of president should be one that we should not be talking about partisanship. And so I recognize, looking at the faces of the members on this side, I see a little regret that really we should have one candidate, and but it is what it is. I wish we could do the vote again, and so forth, Mr. Speaker. But that's for them to deal with. And so I want to congratulate Mrs. Burton, to thank her family for agreeing for her to serve, and to congratulate not only the indigenous people of Dominica, but indigenous people all over the world. And not too long ago, in Dominica, Mr. Speaker, we must speak the truth, not too long ago, the Kalinago people were looked down upon in our country. People used to say that they could win the votes in the Kalinago territory with rum and conkers. Not with development, not with improving the lives. But today, the Kalinago people are among the most enlightened in our community. The first time that they were given special consideration was in 2000 in Rosie Douglas, the Prime Minister, creating a department of Kalinago Affairs. And eventually we upgraded it to a ministry. And today it is a respected ministry in the government of Dominica. And it is given the same respect like every other ministry within the government system. And we have a minister, a member of parliament sitting in the cabinet and be able to represent the interests of the Kalinago people with a sense of stridency. So I celebrate, Mr. Speaker, with the Kalinago people. And I celebrate with all women across the world. Mr. Speaker, I was a bit taken aback by the extraordinary reaction, positive reaction, which the announcement of Mrs. Burton being a nominee for president made across the world. That we even have here on island, Mr. Speaker, over the last week or so, some people from Guadeloupe who have been here for the last several days documenting the process of the election of Mrs. Burton to the office of president. And indigenous communities across the world are hailing this as a standard bearer for their own governments in respect of how they treat indigenous people in their countries. But those kinds of considerations, Mr. Speaker, in a very sincere way, can only come from people who understand and who care for people and people who know the indigenous community and who care for the indigenous community. And I will say finally, Mr. Speaker, I am the only Prime Minister and only political leader and only minister and only parliamentarian who has been recognized by the Kalinago people, Mr. Speaker, by receiving the highest honor. And it came from a gentleman who we had political banters with, Mr. Williams, who recognized me. Can you imagine that? So it tells you of the love and the admiration which the Kalinago people have for me and which I have for them. And I gave them the assurance that we shall continue to work with them. And so this is a huge day. This is a red letter day for the Kalinago people. And I had the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to attend a ceremony in the Kalinago territory. When was it? Saturday? Saturday gone. And I sat there for a couple of hours listening to ordinary Kalinago people who came up and took the microphone. Some spoke in Creole, some spoke in English, some spoke a mixture of both, and who expressed their heartfelt admiration and pride that something that was at the back of their head that were hoping and praying for recognition, that it was able to happen in their lifetime. And some went on to say, Mr. Speaker, that they say the saying, and I paraphrase, truth be told, they expected that to happen. And so for them, it was a culmination of the recognition that we're given to the Kalinago people in Dominica. And so I salute Mrs. Burton, and I joked at the function the other day, and that's why we must always work in humility, Mr. Speaker. And I said at the function, you know, I walked in, and she had to stand, because the Prime Minister came in. I said, next week, I have to stand when she walks in. But I will do so, as I always have done, with respect. Respect for the office of President, and respect for the holder of the office of President. Because it's important for us to respect offices. And we have been admonished by the Bible to respect offices and holders of offices. And failure to do so, that there are certain consequences of such. And let us respect the office of President. Let us respect the holder of the office of President. And from the morning, the afternoon of the 2nd, when she'll be sworn in, she will be, I'll call Her Excellency Mrs. Sylvanie Burton, President of the Commonwealth of Dominica. And so we remember the contribution of people like Jolly John and Carib Warner, who defended the patrimony and the dignity of the Kalinago people. Came down from Warner and down into Massac. There's so many Kalinagos were massacred, defending the Kalinago people. And for some of the modern day warriors, who in a gentle way have been able to be at the vanguard of demanding more for the Kalinago people. And so the ancestors of the Kalinago people are celebrating. Likewise, those of us who are alive and well. And so, Mr. Speaker, congratulations to, I could go on and on. I could go on and on to speak about this, because it is necessary for us to speak about it and to hail this historic day in the Commonwealth of Dominica, that we are leading the way in recognition of women. We're leading the way in our respect and recognition of our indigenous people. Because had it not been for them, we will not be here. And there's a historical footnote. The Kalinagos were able to join forces with the Negmawan to help defend our country and liberate our country from slavery and liberate our country from colonialism. And so to attempt to make a mockery of this is an insult to our ancestors, and an insult to those who have been at the vanguard of protecting our patrimony. But we always have an opportunity to absolve ourselves. And I do hope that in our quiet reflections, if we are not prepared to respond openly as the Senator refused to with the information I asked him to find, and which he has, I do hope that in our quiet reflection, that we can recognize the truth. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I too would like to rise to congratulate the President-elect, Mrs. Burton, and her husband, and also to extend gratitude to the former President, Honorable the President Savra and his wife. But it is a very happy day for me. But it's one that was preceded by some sadness. When I think we lost a unique opportunity to celebrate Kalinago heritage and women in Dominica, especially with the news that during the week of activities that celebrates Kalinago heritage and culture, the news that comes in to bring another to divide that celebration. And so it's for some form of sadness that I celebrate this accomplishment of a wonderful Kalinago woman Because amid all of the wonderful celebrations during the course of Kalinago Week, there was an attempt to diffuse that celebration and that unity around the Kalinago territory. To pit one Kalinago warrior against the other, and to attempt to cause some division within our sacred Kalinago space. And so I'm really saddened by this. And Mr. Speaker, I suspect the Kalinago space may become a very hostile space to some of the people who are tempted to cause that division. And so I hope we are mindful of this, that with every action there's a reaction, and with every course of action we take to diffuse the Kalinago consciousness will come at, I suspect, with some serious political implications. Celebrating women and celebrating Kalinago is important. And within the course of Dominica's history, we have seen rightly so that there's been the marriage of our heritage, both on the African descent and also Kalinago descent, to create what we now know as a Creole culture. So when the proclamation came with the sitting parliamentarians on our side, seeking to bring to the fore the importance of indigenous people and women, we were delighted. We were happy. Around the world, people celebrated that, knowing that people who have been oppressed through a colonial system were able to come out and to be highlighted by those in power. And so we lost that opportunity as a country. And more importantly, going into our 45th year of independence, Kalinago Week started the celebration of independence. And to say to the powers that were for the last 400 years that as an independent nation, we can have an attempt to bring everything together and to highlight the Kalinago heritage and the Creole culture. And so, when you look at the Kalinago landscape, the landscape that helped to nurture Mrs. Sylvanie Burton, it is one that has gone through various developments over the years. And more so, importantly, during the course of the tenure of Honorable Prime Minister in 2002 when he came in as Prime Minister, where more emphasis was placed on the Kalinago space. And so the development, a history of the Kalinago space they will highlight a segment where we see much more insertion of government resources within that space. And that is the space that nurtured Mrs. Sylvanie Burton. And that is why it was easy for the cabinet, and on this side here, and the senators on this side here, the parliamentarians on this side, to easily acknowledge the wonderful work of that person who came out of the bowels of a community that has developed and made great strides. And I just say, across the Kalinago space, there are many people who have made major achievements. And Mrs. Burton is one of those who would have come out of that area and produce across the spectrum something that appeals to the normal, fair-minded individual. And so, as a theme for the celebration of independence, it's important to celebrate women. It is also important to celebrate Kalinago. But it is disheartening within that discourse, Mr. Speaker, that the attempt, the old colonial strategy of divide and conquer had to insert itself within our wonderful space. Nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, I really want to congratulate the government, the parliamentarians on this side, in understanding the importance of women as part of our society. Women for many moons who didn't have the right to vote and were victimized in various forms. And we as a government have been doing, for the most part, all we can to ensure that women have their rightful place. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to again congratulate Mrs. Burton, because I think as a woman of Kalinago descent, she has made us proud. I think our ancestors are proud to know that we have the caliber of people who, despite many years of discrimination, can be highlighted across the spectrum. But like I said, Mr. Speaker, um, deep down, I'm somewhat sad knowing that we have lost a unique opportunity to show the rest of the region, to show the world that while we are building a climate resilient country, we can also continue to build a resilient people who can join forces at a certain point in our history to ensure that we have unity across the spectrum. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to hail up all of the Kalinago warriors who came out in large numbers on last Saturday to celebrate with the nominee at the time, Mrs. Burton, and to highlight the genuineness in which they express their sentiments towards one of their own. Because it's always difficult across the spectrum across any community to celebrate your own. It's always difficult. It's always easier to speak about someone else, but it's always difficult to speak about your own. So I really want to celebrate the folks who came out and who spoke from their heart, and who detail in their own way the life and story of just a simple person out of a remote part of the island, as it was described in the previous time during the colonial context. And I really want to thank her family, her husband, more especially, who has who has supported her throughout her tenure as a public servant, and who I know will support her regardless to the small opposition forces that exist in little nooks and crannies across the white Cuban space, continue to support her in her tenure as the president of the Commonwealth of Dominica. And I hope one day to see the president of the Commonwealth of Whitey Cooley. And so I really want to thank everyone for celebrating Kalinago-ness and also celebrating women. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Yes, Honorable Alfred.
Mr. Speaker, I have a little script there. I would like to try to permission to stick to it, because I have so many things going on in my heart. I'm afraid that I might speak out of the abundance of my heart, which might not be too
Permission
good.
granted.
But I stand to thank Honorable Sabra and his wife for having served our country with excellence. And Mr. Speaker, I also want to express high commendation to Mrs. Sylvanie Burton, the President-elect of the Commonwealth of Dominica. I do so as a woman of Kalinago descent because I endured quite a lot as a Kalinago student in Roseau and as a Kalinago girl growing up. So today, if I get a chance for me to stand up and feel good about it, about Kalinago, please allow me. I also do so on behalf of the people of Petit Soufrière, Saint-Sauveur, Good Hope, Mopo, Deepa, Cassibrus, and Formel. For us in the Cassibrus constituency, Sylvanie, as she is affectionately known, is a sister, a friend, a lay associate, and a community worker. As the district development officer, her work brought the realization of several development projects within the Cassibrus constituency. I would like to thank the Prime Minister for presenting this nominee. This is proof that women in Dominica are granted equal and full voice, participation and leadership everywhere and in every aspect, and for making the case that we need the essential role of women of courage in the vision of the achievement of sustainable development, peace, and security. We celebrate with this formidable Kalinago woman leader. Mrs. Burton has demonstrated through her life and work and her leadership in governance, diplomacy, social norm change, and women's empowerment that women make a difference, not just a small difference, but a big and crucial one. She's an incredible role model for our women and girls, and men and boys too. She has broken the glass ceiling, she has pushed the frontier of women's leadership, and she has paved the path for other women and girls to become future leaders. This Kalinago woman's voice will continue to be heard as it pertains to local, national, and international policy and program making in development, in peace and security, in humanitarian action and resilient building, in the promotion and protection of human rights, in climate change action, and in matters pertaining to indigenous people, not only in Dominica, but around the world. Mrs. Burton's leadership and accomplishment and inspiration, an inspiration that makes us want to make a difference in this world, an inspiration that makes us want to uplift our lives in a way that inspires others to recognize their greatness and to do wonderful things. Mr. Speaker, I am just so honored and humbled to be alive on this day. Mrs. Burton, a strong, ambitious, hardworking, intelligent, authentic Kalinago woman, will certainly continue to do well as she takes up the office of president. As neighbors of the Kalinago territory, we share in the joy and pride of this great honorable woman and the honor that is bestowed on this Karina. Notwithstanding, Mr. Speaker, I fully understand why the leader of opposition did not go with her gut feeling and endorse the nomination of Mrs. Burton for the position of president. Mr. Speaker, in her heart, she wanted to. Her sixth sense told her to do it. But the influence and the upbringing that was around her, you don't believe what I'm talking about. Instead, both the leader of the opposition and Mrs. Annette Stanford allowed some people who have no interest in their success as women to let them make themselves silly. You don't want to clap for that because it's not a thing to clap about. But Mr. Speaker, the whole process of nominating a person for election just stayed with me for from the time it started. There was something that happened more than 10 years ago, and this thing just came back to me, and I didn't laugh at the time, but now I laugh. I used to do these programs for the children, and every Christmas I would choose some children and take them to Roseau. We didn't have all that nice thing what Sister Scary giving us now. So you walk around in the lights of the store. Everybody was supposed to get one gift at a certain price, and they can buy whatever else they want. And we'd have some ice cream. Sometimes parents come in, check the buses for them. And then we'd go to KFC and sometimes on the bayfront. And one year we went into KFC and there was this little girl sulking. I don't KFC. I don't eat in KFC. So I told her, Mama, just tell her, oh, you can go somewhere to get something what she like. I said, what you want to do? A kid's meal. I said, what you? Another little boy with me, he jumping up laughing. I said, yourself, stop that now. He said, but miss. But kids meal is still KFC. And I do not know, Mr. Speaker, why I find myself, that thing come back in my mind, because for me, that is how silly it looked. I don't eat in KFC, I don't KFC, but I'll have a kid's meal. And the little boy said, well, only thing you're going to get is a drumstick. You're not going to be able to choose your chicken. You know, and if somebody can explain to me why that thing in my mind came back to my mind with that process, you'll tell me after. But for me, I don't want KFC. I don't like KFC, but I'll take a kid's meal. Mr. Speaker, because just take your KFC. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, somebody has to come and counsel me after because I just can't seem to get over that. As a woman who understands the struggle of women and what it is to work hard, I don't know if I'm out of place, but I really want to issue a caution note to the leader of the opposition. Because I want Honorable Paul to know that she was born for greatness. And she needs to activate her sixth sense, which is a sense that is more sensitive in ladies than in men. And listen to that still small voice and follow it. Because almost everybody around you wants you to fail, even those who are sitting on that side with you this morning. Do not let these people use your shoulder to get where they want. because they will never get to where they want, and all they will do is to keep you down. Open your spiritual eyes. If the opposition leader felt that she did not know enough about Mrs. Burton, there were many people she could ask. Any member of the Public Service Commission, past and present. Anybody from local government department, past and present. Anybody from the villages between Concord and Delis. Anybody from the Catholic Church. Any permanent secretary, past and present. And they would have given her enough information. However, Mrs. Burton is our president-elect. Mrs. Burton exhibits the kind of leadership that is guided by knowledge and experience, honesty and humility, empathy and grace, attributes that belong to the highest office on the island, the office of the president. Mr. Speaker, I once again thank the Prime Minister for his nomination. I congratulate Mrs. Burton, and I will let down my hair at the right time in honor of this honorable Kalinago.
Yes, Honorable Blackmore.
Mr. Speaker, me too, I'm rise to firstly express my commendation to President Sovereign and his wife. And growing up as a little boy in Mao, a young guy growing up in Mao, one segment supported the likes of Honorable Rosie Douglas, may soul rest in peace, and Dr. at the time, Para Revere. People like myself were inspired by His Excellency Charles Sovereign. And I can recall he gave many dynamic speeches, but there are two of them that are prominent within my psyche. One during a political meeting in 1985 at Lindo Park, and then the second one was at the then Master Basketball Court when he was an ambassador. And I sat next to him in cabinet. But Mr. Speaker, before I stood up, I wanted to go after the opposition. But upon reflection, I want to see this moment for what it actually is, which is a celebration not only on behalf of Mrs. Burton and her family and the Kalinago people, but a celebration of our existence as a people. And I believe, I firstly, Mr. Speaker, want to take this opportunity to highly commend the Prime Minister and this Dominican Labour Party administration for the drum major impulse that has been bestowed upon the Prime Minister and this government to fight on behalf of the ones marginalized who occupy the margins of society and to lift them up beyond the margin of society. And that is what the appointment and the election, Mr. Speaker, of Mrs. Burton is all about. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the fact that we have to express ourselves within the democratic framework, but when the opportunity presents itself for us to repatriate our minds and our thinking towards embracing the mantra of one nation, one flag, one people, as articulated by King Hunter in song, we should do that. We should embrace that moment, Mr. Speaker. And that is what I believe. That is what I believe the nomination and the subsequent election of Mrs. Burton presented to us as a mature people, especially those of us who are privileged to serve the people of Dominica in the highest office in this parliament, Mr. Speaker. It was an opportunity for us to so embrace that moment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said it very well. When you think about the Dominican experience that started before our time, how was that possible, Mr. Speaker, without the sweat and sacrifices of those who were there before us. We spoke about our independence, and we're now just on the eve of the celebration of our independence. It was an opportune time for us, therefore, to see this opportunity to unite, Mr. Speaker, and to unite behind the best nominee or the better nominee, Mr. Speaker, for the goodness of country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you can recall, I'm older than you, when the people of the Kalinago area came into Roseau, how they were castigated, Mr. Speaker. For matter of fact, they were scared to come into Roseau, Mr. Speaker. And that's a fact. For matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, there's a calypso by Mighty Dino that I refuse to play on my program. And this calypso in itself gives you a description as to how the people of the Kalinago territory were actually viewed by us. We came and we met them there. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, they were marginalized and stereotyped, Mr. Speaker. And that speaks, Mr. Speaker, volumes as to the project that this Labour Party administration, under the leadership of Roosevelt Skerrit, is embarking on, Mr. Speaker. And that's why I made reference to one flag, one nation, one people. So there's no two Dominica. There's one Dominica. But there can be only one Dominica when everyone, notwithstanding the color of your skin, Mr. Speaker, can be equal participant in this project of developing this country and to have access to the national cake, Mr. Speaker. And that is what the nomination and subsequent election of the first Kalinago person, a woman in that, Mr. Speaker, symbolizes, Mr. Speaker. And that is what we should be celebrating here this morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am confident that this young Miss Burton, I say young, 57 years old, will do what the office calls for, to unite this country. This country is calling for unity. It is calling for us to realize that there's one Dominica, that we're too small for all this battling and this muscular kind of demonstration in Parliament because something comes from Roosevelt Skerrit. Even if, irrespective of the fact, Mr. Speaker, it is laudable, it is noble, let us go against it and make a mockery of the process, Mr. Speaker. That was never the intention of democracy, Mr. Speaker. It was never. So let us support Mrs. Burton. Let us support this government, Mr. Speaker. Let us support this country. I wish her well. This is somebody who has given her life to country. This is somebody who never was declared as a candidate for any political party, Mr. Speaker. And I believe she is going to continue in this office, in the highest office. Nobody ever contemplated, even in the recent past, that a Kalinago woman would have ascended to the highest office in this country. And that is what we should be celebrating here this morning, Mr. Speaker. And to give Jack his jacket. And to all I was expecting the leader of the opposition to have done, to have stood up and say, Honorable Prime Minister, you took us on this one. We fully support, Mr. Speaker. But we know what is happening. I'm going to stick to my script. I'm not going to give you any blaster this morning, beyond what I said this morning. So I wish her well, and God bless this beautiful country. Let us embrace the whole mantra, one flag, one nation, one people, one president, Mr. Speaker, for the Commonwealth of Dominica, Mr. Speaker. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise at this point to offer my sincere condolences on my behalf, and I'm sure on behalf of the opposition side of the House, to the family of Reverend William Wilberforce Warty, who died just under 2 weeks ago. Mr. Speaker, for those who don't know, Mr. Warty was from Portsmouth. He was a man I have known for the last 23 years. He was, for many years, the superintendent of the Methodist Church in Dominica. He was a man of immense intellect, a brilliant orator. He got a PhD from UWI K-Ville in theology. And Mr. Speaker, I felt I couldn't allow this opportunity to pass without saying just a few words about Reverend Warty. He was a man who spoke not just on matters of religion, but he spoke on matters of state, in defense of our democracy, in defense of our constitution, in defense of free speech, and he fought and spoke about corruption in public office. He was fearless and he was steadfast. And so, before I close this morning, I just want to recall briefly the first time I heard him preach in Portsmouth in 2001 at the funeral of the late, great Jenna born Maud Armour. And Reverend Warty, at that time, he was at his peak, in his prime. And I was really fortunate at that time to be at the Methodist Church in Portsmouth to hear him at that funeral. And he said, he gave a sort of imaginary conversation between Jenna Armour at the altar of the Lord, basically saying that when you die, doesn't matter who you are, when you die, when you go before God, we're all the same. And he said that God would ask Jenna 3 questions. Is that you? Of course, Jenna replied, yes. And Jenna would speak about all his achievements and all his accomplishments. Second question, is that so? And the third one, is that all? And when I recall all the sermons I've heard from Reverend Warty, that to me stands out very strongly. And I believe that the people of Portsmouth, the people of Dominica, have lost a great son of the soil. I think a light in Dominica has gone out as a result of the passing of Dr. Reverend William Wilberforce Warty. I would like to invite all members of this House at his funeral on October 20th, 2023, to pay tribute to this great Dominican, Reverend Dr. William Wilberforce Warty. May his soul rest in eternal peace.
Mr. Speaker, with your leave, I also want to rise to say a few words. Firstly, to extend congratulations and appreciation to the outgoing President, His Excellency Charles Angelo Savrin, who has served or is about to come to the end of serving 2 terms. As we all know, he has served for many, many years the public and Dominica as a whole in various capacities. And so, both to himself and to his wife, I extend the deepest appreciation and thanks for that service. Before I move to expressing views on the President-elect, I'd just like to ask my fellow Portsmouthian, if I can use that phrase, for the Senator Douglas. I noticed that he has extended an invitation to all in the House. I take it that that is at the behest of the family of the distinguished Reverend Warty, who, of course, I agree with him, was a distinguished son of the soil. Of course, I too extend recognition and condolences to the family of Reverend Warty. He was indeed a strong voice and certainly made his mark and represented Dominica well. Mr. Speaker, I come now to the matter at hand, the presidency and to the president-elect who we have just elected in this House. And I must say that, speaking for myself and echoing much of what has been said by previous speakers, certainly previous speakers on this side, because I note with disdain the absence of any acknowledgement by Senator Douglas to what has taken place today and to the election of a new president, president-elect. And I find, Mr. Speaker, that on top of the very strong views that I have developed over the past week and a half or so in relation to this particular process of the election of a president and to the attitude and actions of the opposition to that particular event, Mr. Speaker, I have contempt and disgust, and in a different forum, I would use stronger language for what has transpired in relation to the election of a president for Dominica. Mr. Speaker, the idea, let me put it this way. We're in the House, and I fully anticipate and understand, I've been here long enough, the refusal, the inability of the opposition over many years to agree to, cooperate with, support anything from the government. It's ridiculous, but we've come to understand it. And whilst I had expected, perhaps foolishly, some difference in this reconstituted so-called independent opposition, what I have seen, Mr. Speaker, is a continuation of pretty much what had happened before. Dressed in better clothes, smiley faces, but the same ridiculous nonsense. Mr. Speaker, a president of a country, a symbol of unity of the people, not even for that, Mr. Speaker, could these folks bring themselves to say, all right, we're not entirely happy with certain aspects of this particular person. If we had to ourselves select somebody, we would have looked for somebody with this or that qualification or this or that, or there's this or that about this person that we're not 100% happy with. However, taking the big picture, understanding what we are dealing with, understanding the historic step, understanding the candidacy, a woman, a Kalinago, the first and the symbolism, apart from anything else, that is contained within that person. Understanding that the person is vastly qualified in terms of what the Constitution requires for the position, that the opposition would have at least said, we have concerns, but we will support. But no. They chose to put up a drumstick. Mr. Speaker, that is really the height of idiocy. This is a situation where there was no possibility, as the English will say, there was not a snowball's chance in hell that that candidate could be elected in this House. So it wasn't as if you were putting forward a candidate who had a realistic prospect of acceding to the position. It was typically and plainly a spoiling tactic. It had no other purpose that I can see. And, Mr. Speaker, the cynicism of it is demonstrated by the fact that the candidate put forward by the leader of the opposition, she says, and none of them have dissented, so I have to accept on behalf of all of them, those in here and those outside, the candidate put forward is a mimic of the candidate the Honorable Prime Minister put forward. There is no chance, Mr. Speaker, that that candidate would have been nominated by the leader of the opposition and by the opposition if the Prime Minister had not nominated a Kalinago woman. No chance. Again, I would say not a snowball's chance in hell would Annette Sanford have been nominated by the leader of the opposition and by the members of the opposition. And Mr. Speaker, that, to my mind, should be condemned. We need to get to the point where we are able and mature enough to identify the issues that we fight over, the issues that we dispute, and the issues that we can come together and support. And if this, Mr. Speaker, was not an issue upon which we could have unity and support, even if that support was qualified, it says volumes, Mr. Speaker, and I wait to see, but I find it difficult to see that there's much else that we can get support on. Mr. Speaker, as has been said by others, it may well be that on reflection, members or some members of the opposition may realize that this was a golden opportunity that they missed to place their names on the right side of history. But, Mr. Speaker, that's a matter for them. I just felt that I needed to make my point, and indeed, originally, I had intended to speak with much greater forthrightness and in stronger terms than I'm doing now, because I really feel that time has come. I've sat in this house for quite a while, and I really feel that the time has come that we need to grow up as a people and as a country, and we need to stop playing games that are not of any benefit to the Dominican population. We are in this house for the purposes not of ourselves, but of Dominica and the populace of Dominica. And so when we take steps, when we take actions, Mr. Speaker, in this house, in my respectful and humble view, those actions should be predicated on the positive impact those actions will have on the population. And I can see nothing about the action that was taken by the opposition. They're entitled to take it. They're entitled to take it. But I can see nothing about it which is or could possibly or remotely be in the wider interests of Dominica. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I would strongly admonish the members of the opposition to, in future sessions, work with the government where you can legitimately and fairly and honorably do so. And where you feel that there are areas that you can assist, maybe with contributions, then do so. But please, do not cynically and unnecessarily impede the development of Dominica. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I myself would just like to commend His Excellency Charles Savre and Mrs. Savre for sterling contribution to Dominica. Though he did not teach me at the grammar school, but I remember that he offered me to work with him at NDC at the time. So we went a long way back. And I think he's a great Dominican intellect, a mentor to many, a teacher and a statesman. So I would like to take this opportunity to extend commendation to his wife and himself for exceptional public service to Dominica. Mrs. Sylvanie Burton, I would like to congratulate you on your election as President-elect of the Commonwealth of Dominica. I think it is indeed a joyous but historical moment for all of us in Dominica to witness that the first woman to be the president, but most importantly, a Kalinago brave. And that was done through a democratic process. As I said before, as we mature, as people, we reflect. My mantra to Dominica has been that we need to unite as a people. We must unite. 70,000 people, about that. Can you imagine what we can achieve when we are together as one? Some processes have like a battle, but at the end of the battle, we have to remember who we are We are all Dominicans, all of us. And therefore, what we are seeking is the best for Dominica. So, I think that the spirits of our ancestors is rejoicing at this moment. But I think, again, and I always say, that sometimes when people die, we want to say good things about them. But I would like to place on record I would say more a bipartisan statement. And that's directed to the Honorable Prime Minister. The nomination showed depth of thought. Depth of thought. And not just thought, but genuine. So I would like to commend the Prime Minister for his nomination, because it showed depth of thought in terms of the originality of bringing forward a woman and also a Kalinago person. And now we are really a Creole culture now. That's why I'm saying that we need to unite as a people. Battle on the politics, especially on the platform, political platform, because you have leeway to say things. But let us unite as a people. Let's not bring down the state. And I heard one of the honorable ministers spoke about the colonial strategy of divide. Let us not go down that road after the process has already occurred. I think what we need, both opposition and government side need to come together and focus on some of the issues that we need to put in place for our country. And respect offices. Respect offices. So again, I would like to say once again, congratulations to our President-elect, Mrs. Sylvani Burton, and her husband, who is the, what do we say, the first Mr., the first gentleman-elect. So again, congratulations. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the minutes of the meetings of Tuesday 25th, Thursday 27th, Friday 28th, Monday 31st July, and Tuesday 1st August 2023, and Tuesday 12th of September 2023.
Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the minutes of the meetings of Tuesday 25th, Thursday 27th, Friday 28th, Monday 31st July, and Tuesday 1st August and Tuesday 12th September 2023 be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The minutes of Tuesday 25th, Thursday 27th, Friday 28th, and Monday 31st July, and Tuesday 1st August 2023, and Tuesday 12th September 2023 be adopted as be confirmed. Be confirmed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Presentation of papers.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to lay the following paper on the table. Investor 2022.
Yeah, restart, please. Your mic was off.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table. Invest Dominican Authority, IDA, audited statements and annual reports for 2022.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission annual report for the year 2015, the year 2016, the year 2017, and the year 2018.
After you ate all the ladies' fruit cake and you drink all the juice, sorrel juice, you didn't come to her funeral and you invited people to other people's funeral. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I move that the House be adjourned, sine die, while we still await the factual response from Senator Douglas, Mr. Speaker.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the House be adjourned, sine die. Those in favor? Those against? The House have it. House is adjourned, sine die.